We are talking 9/11, especially these FOIAs, Freedom of Information Act requests that, you can force the government to disclose some information. Most of the time you do get stonewalled, as is the case with Aidan and many others out there. But a lot of times they really do reveal a lot of interesting and worthwhile information. You were talking about you trying to find out the specifics of some of the calls that took place that day. Bring us through that process.
Sure. Via Freedom of Information Act requests, I'm currently trying to have the Department of Justice, FBI, produce the evidence that they have relied on to establish the existence of these phone calls, these alleged phone calls. There is confusion about whether there were cell phone calls or seatback phones, or aircraft seatback phone calls, and I just think it's time for the Department of Justice to produce this source information to hopefully put some of these controversies to rest.
Well, let's talk about one of those controversies. I mean, we have the Barbara Olson phone call. Okay, Barbara Olson, a CNN correspondent who is married to Solicitor General Ted Olson at the time. And it was widely reported throughout all of mainstream media, whether you were watching Fox, NBC, ABC, CBS, that she had successfully made 2 cell phone calls to her husband describing that people had been herded to the back of a plane and that hijackers had taken over. And that somehow, some of the reports had even said that somehow she was already aware of what happened at the Twin Towers, that planes had hit the World Trade Center. Now, according to David Ray Griffin, and I must be honest, I have not seen the documentation regarding this, the FBI has now said that these phone calls never took place, and in actuality, she tried to call him but was unsuccessful in doing so. What's your take on that?
An interesting discrepancy, to say the least. I know that these model aircraft were designed to contain these seatback airphones, these GPE airphones. Whether these particular aircraft had those or not, I'll hopefully be able to find out, because I've also requested in my my lawsuit with them information that might demonstrate that the planes did or did not have these seatback airphones on board them.
Now let's talk about some of your successes over the last few years. When did you first start doing this? And in your mind, what are some of the most important documents that you have gotten the government to actually disclose?
I started about 2 years ago. I was hopefully trying to have the DOJ, FBI produce records that demonstrated that they collected evidence of aircraft wreckage from Shanksville and the Pentagon in Arlington, Virginia. And being less than totally experienced in that process, I did make a couple of minor errors that created some wiggle room for them to play word games with me, more or less. And,
explain to people that. I mean, you'll word something in a certain manner, and they'll just reject your request out of hand because you didn't ask properly through a sentence. Explain the frustration there.
Yeah, it's basically an arbitrary decision upon the judge as to whether one has broken the administrative procedure by changing the language in their request. That's really what it boiled down to. And I thought that there had been no practical distinction between my original request and the one contained in my lawsuit. The judge disagreed. However, the Department of Justice, in any event, stated that because the aircraft identities were never in question, that therefore no records were generated. Whether that means that no records were actually manufactured or generated by the record search, I still to this day don't know.
Interesting. So what's your first big success? What's the first document you get back to these people, the FOIA, and then they say, all right, you requested it properly, here you go, here's the document. What was it?
Probably the one with the FAA, within which Popular Mechanics claims that the FAA provided them certain information about aircraft intercepts and aircraft responses to wayward aircraft over U.S. airspace between the years 1999 and 2001. The FAA indicated that they do not track such information. However, of course, Popular Mechanics, told the world that apparently they do. So there was some discrepancy there that to this day
And that was after we had a representative from the FAA actually say that 67 intercepts had taken place in 2001 already prior to 9/11, and that was the claim that was being disputed, I guess, by popular mechanics. Yet when you tried to get an official response from the FAA, they just said, nope, Johnny nonsense, we would never keep records on such matters.
Right. They claimed it could not track such information or keep records of the number of times that they contacted NORAD in response to wayward aircraft over U.S. Airspace. So I'd like to know where mechanics got the information myself.
Yeah, simply incredible that they would even make such a claim. What have been some of the other big whoppers that you've gotten back from the FAA and other organizations?
Well, the NTSB, I requested a copy of the data download flight data recorder for 77 and 93. The timestamp contained on that data file for 77 predates the recovery of the black box itself by 5 hours, which is somewhat noteworthy in my opinion, at least, I think, to say the least. Through further research, I've been able to discover that in the 20 years prior now, approximately, the 9/11 black boxes are virtually the only ones without inventory control serial numbers attributed to them. And these serial numbers are important because it allows the NTSB investigators to anticipate what memory configuration they're going to encounter when they go to download information from the black boxes. It's in their handbook. It's available online. These serial numbers are required to facilitate the download. They explained also that they can perform a download, but it's more complicated without the serial numbers. It requires some reverse engineering. With that said, had the DOJ wanted this information ASAP, one would think that they would have provided serial numbers to the NTSB, perform these downloads, and get the information as quickly as possible. They indicated in some email communication that when they know the serial numbers, they will publish them.
Interesting indeed. It does seem like they are so constrictive on this information that they really don't want it out in the public. Just the claims that, oh, we don't have the black boxes from the Twin Towers, and then the dispute of the police officer that wrote that book. I can't exactly remember which one it was. I think it was something about Ground Zero in it. But he said they found 3 of the 4 black boxes. There alone is a huge discrepancy. The fact that, yeah, I know. I mean, these things just keep coming up and keep coming up. And like you said, you're having all this trouble finding out where the FBI got their information about these cell phone calls and these calls that were made from, seatback phones. Why won't they disclose this information 8 years later? Meanwhile, you had Max Cleland resign from the 9/11 Commission as it happened because he said it was a scam. He wasn't allowed to see all the documents. He said some of the members are going to be able to see some of the documents, but even then, they can be restricted by the White House. This investigation was a cover-up from the very beginning.
It seems that way. And other research of note that is still of interest to me is the nanothermite that was apparently contained in the World Trade Center dust. Based on research of others, and a little of mine also, it's been known, I think Kevin Ryan's been done some good work on this. The only 2 kids on the block, basically, in the late 1990s who were developing the nanothermite were the Department of Energy and the Naval Surface Warfare Center, the Indian Head Division. And interestingly enough, there were many renovations taking place at the World Trade Center in the final years of its existence, about the last 5 or 6 years. And one of the major contractors on the site during those entire 6 years, up until the day of 9/11, was a company called Turner Construction. They oversaw the demolition of the Seattle Kingdom in 2000. They also constructed the headquarters of the Naval Surface Warfare Center in 1997. One of their divisions was the Indian Head Division that in 2008 were described as the leading developers and manufacturers of nanothermite. And in 1999, they were described as the only reliable source of nano-aluminum powders, of which is a component of nanothermite, of course.
Yeah, I mean, Kevin Ryan's just done some incredible research on that, and then you look at the scientific work of Stephen Jones and Niles Ariat, And it seems almost irrefutable to me. But then you watch the propaganda piece put out there by the National Geographic, and I mean, I picked that apart for 2 hours last week. I don't know if you actually watched the program, but they just make outlandish statements like, if this thermite can't burn through this beam right here, no thermite could. Meanwhile, if you just type in thermite into YouTube, you can watch how they'll take a much smaller cup, they'll ignite it on the top of a car, and it'll go right through the car into the gas tank, make the gas tank explode. It'll go right through the engine of a car. I mean, it's just incredible to me that people buy into the propaganda. And then, did you see the experiment they did for the Pentagon?